Listen to this episode if you feel like you are in a sales plateau and you aren't quite sure how to get up and over that in your business right now. This is something that I'm actually getting a lot in the DMs right now as people were kind of looking at their accounting or their numbers from last year, and they looked at it and they were like, shoot, I thought we were growing more than this. And all of a sudden we kind of start to dive into the numbers and we see that our sales were pretty similar from the year before and last year. A sales plateau can feel super frustrating because you're doing all of this work all of the time and it feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again, and it worked for you before. Why are you not still growing? And it's almost more frustrating because you're still doing the things that you did before that actually got you to where you are. You're doing all the same things that helped you grow, but why are you not growing more? And so maybe we can kind of dive into a little bit of what this might be. I want to talk about kind of what the common sales plateaus are, some major takeaways, the difference between growing and scaling, as well as what it really takes to scale. What are some of the questions you need to ask, and what are the 5 major ways that you actually are going to scale your sales. So as always, we're not gatekeeping around here. I'm giving you kind of a good, strong overview of what scaling your business really is. This is exactly what we do with my product sales expansion clients. So I'm really giving you kind of an inside look at what scaling really is and how do you go about doing it in your business. Now, first I want to kind of define the word scaling. Sometimes when I talk about scaling, people say, I ask you, are you starting your business or are you scaling your business? And are you trying to grow or are you trying to scale? And I kind of want to define, at least my definition of scaling would be you already have consistent sales. You already know every time you put something out, you're going to get X amount of dollars. Your sales are kind of predictable. You have a marketing strategy. You have a sales strategy. You know what you need to post, or you know what actions you need to take in order to grow your audience, nurture your audience, and at the very least, sell to your audience. You probably have a pretty good community that really loves you. If you put something out, your sales are kind of predictable. If your sales are predictable, they're kind of controllable. You know what you have to do. You kind of have control over when you make sales, when you launch, and how that happens, and what to post, how to sell. Then you are scaling. If you are not yet to that point of understanding that your sales are predictable, I would put you in the category of growing your business, building your business, which is totally fine. We are constantly, by definition, always growing and always scaling. But when I kind of talk about it, I just want to define what that means to me. So this is why we have 2 programs, because growing your business versus scaling your business looks very different. Growing your business is all about taking really big action. So if you aren't yet to that consistent sales mark where it isn't predictable, it isn't you don't really have that solid proof of concept yet, what that really means online, at least, what that means is that we need to take big action. We need to implement marketing strategy. We need to implement sales strategy. We need to, really expand our audience. Growing your business takes really big action, learning the strategies, implementing strategies, and filling in the common gaps that you have. Scaling your business is a lot smaller of movements, actually. It's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be the same actions. You still have to do your same growing actions, but now we actually have to make some small tweaks and adjustments behind the scenes, and scaling is actually very different than growing. Scaling a lot of times comes down to a lot of behind the scenes, inward movements. It's a lot of scaling what people can't really always see. You're prepping your behind the scenes to be more scalable, because can you operate your business right now if you were to 10x, 50x, 100x the sales that you have? So we actually have to do a lot to kind of almost prep the business, as well as increase conversions and all of that. So I just kind of wanted to talk about the difference there. Is growing your business is really big moves. What you did to grow your business was you implemented a marketing strategy. You posted every day. You were kind of grinding to get your brand name out there. You were doing all of those pieces. Now that you have proof of concept, you have predictable sales, sales are going to come in, we now have to scale. We have to improve our conversion rates. We have to add different elements of how can we consistently grow, nurture, and sell, and kind of make a lot of tweaks and adjustments. Scaling is not about doing more. I think a big misconception is that people are like, okay, well, what it took me to get to this point is I had to do like these actions. So I must have to just send more emails, launch more products, post more content, but that doesn't actually always add up. More does not equal more sales. A lot of times it's actually simplifying and making a lot of tweaks and adjustments behind the scenes. There can be something on your website that we tweak that can take you 15 minutes to do, and it'll increase your sales by $10,000. I've had that happen. And so there's small little tweaks and adjustments behind the scenes, and we're filling gaps more so. There's some common plateaus that I've seen, and a lot of times the plateau kind of hits at 30K, 60K, 150K, 750, and then just over $1 million. Those are some very common sales plateaus, at least to start, for whatever reason. If you're in one of those, I just want to normalize that, is that sometimes people, like, what it takes to get to these different kind of major milestones looks very different. You have to have certain pieces in place in the strategy. Just from working and seeing the behind the scenes of a lot of companies, these are all kind of areas that it seems, and of course, like, give or take 50K around those, but they're kind of a common piece that people kind of get stuck. It's almost like, okay, now you have to level up into a next stage. I actually have a podcast episode called The 5 Stages of Business, and I do talk about that, and those are kind of the 5 stages as where you're at. So if you're at any of those, this is your sign that if it's a pattern that you keep kind of sticking at this number and you don't really know what to do next, this is your sign right here that you might be in a plateau and we might need to make some changes to the overall strategy. So let's dive into the nitty gritty. Maybe you have the same sales numbers the last couple of years. Maybe it's like 6 months. I would say if you are kind of stuck at the same sales, monthly sales for 6 months or so, that is a sign of a plateau. And it just really feels like you've kind of stopped growing, or maybe you just don't really know how to hit that next major milestone. You might not be like, all right, Maddie, my sales aren't really like plateaued, but I kind of just feel like things are stagnant. I feel like I don't really know what to do to really drastically expand, or things just feel stagnant and your growth feels like it's slowed down. I think a lot of times we get kind of this high when our business starts to grow. We're like, oh my gosh, like a lot of times it kind of just all feels like it starts coming together. Things start to build. You're like, all right, it's happening. And then you're like, all right, it happened. And now we kind of feel crickets. And so that is when you know that you're in a plateau. If it's more than a couple of months at that same point, you have a month that's normally really, really busy, or that you really normally see a big growth, and you're not, that means that we have to start making some changes. And again, it's not changes that you have to start doing more. It's not that you need another platform. It's not that you need to send double the emails. It's not that you need to post on your feed twice as much. What we have to do is actually identify what is causing the plateau, where the inefficiencies are, and then expand. So we first have to look inward before we can look outwards. Oftentimes what happens is we kind of get comfortable and we do the same thing, and what your actions are is at the level of sales that you're getting. So like a lot of times we have to upgrade our actions to be able to upgrade the amount of sales that we have. So the actions that you're taking, if you take them long enough, consistently enough, over and over and over again, you almost like your sales level up to that point of action. You're like, okay, this is great. Like, you're posting every day, you're out on social media, you're launching every maybe 6 to 8 weeks. You might have a sales incentive every once in a while. Your sales are flowing in, you're shipping them out, and you're kind of almost like in a complacency spot that you're keeping on going. You're almost like coasting. You get to a point, and I know a lot of business owners get to this point where they're like, all right, like, you get to this point where you're just coasting. You're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then you kind of realize you're in this plateau. And it's because the actions that you're taking are congruent with the amount of sales that you're making. And so we almost have to change your actions in order to change your sales. We have to make some major changes behind the scenes. And it doesn't mean we need to make those changes every single day. It's not that we're adding new things to your plate. It's that we have to shake things up. We got to look at something and do something a little differently. If it's a pattern, a lot of times it's going to get you to this place. If you feel this pattern, it is a problem. If you're like, all right, like we're constantly here, it means that there's a gap somewhere. So instead of feeling like you need to add more, we actually need to analyze what is working and what's not. AKA we need to identify the gaps and the opportunities. This is some of the first things I do with any of my clients that are kind of at that like 30, 60, 100K and beyond, is we first need to identify what your gaps are and what your opportunities are. I guess we do this with every client, but when it comes to scaling is we want to look at the deep knowledge, the deep data that you have, because at a certain point you have so much data in your business. A lot of scaling, the first stage is really understanding how to read, analyze, and then change your actions according to the data that you see. So the first things first is we have to identify the gaps and the opportunities. That all comes down to your overall data. That comes down to, let us look at what is happening in your business right now. I want to look at your website. I want to look at your emails, your socials. Like, I want to look at everything, any data that you have, and I want to see where are people falling off, what conversion rate or what KPI, key performance indicator, is not actually working well for you and is below average. And then we look at, okay, what are the opportunities for growth here? What are things that you might not be doing that we need to implement? Do you not have an email funnel for certain pieces that are really going to help? Or what are things that we can do to remedy that situation? So we first find the gaps. We identify the gaps based on your data. We identify what's actually working really well based on your data, looking at your content, what content is actually converting for you. And then we provide, like, you have to be able to know, okay, great, like I can now look at this data, see that this is working really well, which means we want to do more of it, and see that this over here is not doing as well. So we need to fix that. We need to remedy that situation. I think a problem with data is, I think it's a little bit of it almost feels intimidating. Because there's so many metrics. What the heck do they mean? How do you even know what they mean? How do I even know what is average? And what do I do because of those numbers that are there? Like, how do you get started with it? But when you really understand the data side of your business, when you really understand the analytics and be able to have a plan based on it, you're basically taking action based on fact and not just feeling. A lot of times in business, we act on our feelings as opposed to acting on facts. And when we look at our data, we can actually find facts about your audience. So a lot of times people ask me a question, I'm like, that really depends on who you are. We need to look at your data to be able to provide the answer to that, because there's nuances in every industry, in every community, in every audience. We really kind of have to dive in a little bit deeper to that. So I think the major takeaway in a scaling plan is that what got you started is not going to actually help you scale your business. What got you to where you are is not going to get you to that next step. So we have to do some of that analyzing. We have to be able to understand. Like, I always talk about business being a skill set. And the first half, like the growing skill set, is marketing, it's sales, it's, what's your messaging? What's your branding? How do we communicate that message? And scaling, the overall skill set that you need to learn a lot of times is how to optimize, how to analyze your data, how to simplify it, how to do a little bit more of the admin stuff in your business, kind of become more of that like CEO role. It's a little bit more of kind of that behind the scenes things. So once we've been able to look at the data, analyze it, and really start kind of simplifying and optimizing things behind the scenes, then we can start looking at the more outward stuff. Then we can start looking at your marketing, your sales, your website, seeing if there's anything there. Is there an opportunity for us to add a platform or anything along those lines? But really what it comes down to is that a lot of times these gaps, the reason for the plateau, I think we take it so personally, but it has nothing to do with us. The reason for the plateau is that we are like too in our own business to be able to see anything else. We are too in our business working on it to be able to actually take a step back and be like, oh, we need to be able to do these things. This is just like the same thing. It's almost like a toxic relationship where you're like too in it to realize that it's bad. And then all of a sudden you're like, you get out of it and you look back and you're like, oh, or like your friends are like, all right, like, he sounds great, right? Like they can see it from the outside because they can notice it. They can see, they're like just not blinded by the love. Whereas when you're like so in your own business and you're doing it and you're excited about it and you have this idea and that idea and you're shipping and you're packaging and you're making, and we have like so many of these hats going on, we're kind of blind to our own gaps, our own opportunities for growth and what else is out there. Just like that toxic relationship we all had in high school, right? That your friends were like, yeah, sure, he's great, I promise. It turns out not so great. Looking at kind of the 5 major ways that scaling happens, is kind of those big major steps. And this is where a lot of people are like, okay, this is what I need to scale. I just want to make the note that we have to do those behind the scenes stuff first. Otherwise, when you do scale your sales, you're going to be incredibly overwhelmed. You're going to miss out on sales because your conversion rates haven't been optimized. And we just have to be able to prep the business first and actually become like kind of have a system that becomes ready to scale. And then we can do one of these 5 things. So first things first is you can grow your visibility massively. That is the first way that you can actually really massively expand your sales. You can add a product line to your suite, which means you're basically just selling new things to your current community. You can either increase your prices, which is a common way that people do is all of a sudden they get there and then they increase their prices. I think it's actually better to try to decrease your costs behind the scenes so you don't have to increase the price to the consumer. You're not putting the scaling on the consumer, you're putting the scaling on your business. And so we can then go and we can look and see, can we decrease cost of goods sold? Can we decrease the shipping? Now that you know you're going to start having a lot more sales, can we increase our order quantity to actually decrease the per item order? And then we can try to decrease our costs in different ways. And then last but not least is many tweaks and adjustments to fill gaps. So we have to kind of choose, and we always look at many tweaks and adjustments. We make a lot of tweaks and adjustments because that is where almost like the efficiency, it's like that is where you're getting better. Scaling is not about doing more, it's about being better. It's about actually just improving the overall conversion of what you're doing. And that goes down to growing as well. But tweaks and adjustments are something that everybody can do. I have a client that I worked with inside of PSE, and she had a wonderful business. She was making great money. And we looked at her emails and we saw, oh, okay, there's a certain gap here that she didn't have one of the like essential email sequences that every product-based business owner should have. And we added just one email sequence in. It was like 2 to 3 emails. It took her an hour and she added $7,500 within 6 months. That otherwise would have been lost because that sequence was not there. It was not actually converting. Of course, some of those people might have ended up converting, but an extra $7,500 just from adding one email sequence of 2 to 3 emails. It took her 1 hour to implement that small little thing to fill a certain gap that was in the customer journey. And it actually allowed her to make an extra $7,500 last year. That is really how things scale, is that we make a lot of those little tweaks and adjustments. You can look at it and say, oh, I don't have one of these. Let's just add it in there. Let's see if it works. And then, okay, it's working. How do we optimize it? We can look at your intro email sequence. Okay, that's great. Where are people falling off? Is it actually converting right? We can look at your website. All right, you had 1,000 views this month or 1,000 views today, but at this point, only 0.5 of them are converting. That is a low conversion rate on your website. How can we make your conversion rate look better? We can look and we can see, okay, these people are coming to your homepage and they're bouncing. That means your homepage is not robust enough. It's not keeping them kind of involved. How can we make some tweaks and adjustments to that homepage in order to actually get them to want to look at the product that you have? So what we kind of do is we first have to take that behind the scenes action, take those tweaks and adjustments to ensure that we can maximize the eyes that you have right now, maximize the people that are shopping, and then we want to expand in that big way. So growing your visibility massively. This is when you see like a one brand that's doing a ton of ads at one point. You're like, holy cow, why is this brand all over my feed? Why are they everywhere right now? Maybe they're doing an influencer marketing campaign and they're doing a big ads campaign. Like you see them just everywhere. It's because their major focus right now is expanding their brand awareness. And so they're in the means of scaling based on getting their brand name out there more. That's what a major influencer marketing really is this first major piece, growing that visibility massively to get that idea out there. Next one is adding a product line to your suite. You have a community that already loves you. Are there things that you can almost cross-sell your community into a different product? And that will allow them to want to buy more often. Maybe you have a product that they don't need very often. Can we add a subscription model? Can we make it where it's a totally new product line that is something that they might want to buy more often? And so we can kind of fill that gap there. If you can have a product that can be on a subscription model that they need every 30, 60, 90 days, whatever, that is something that is incredible in 2025 is how we can automate that process and get those sales going. And then you can kind of know what your monthly recurring revenue is. It's a great way to scale, is just simply adding a subscription model. Next one is increasing prices. I think a lot of this kind of of comes from like in the nature of the world that we have today. A lot of people haven't quite increased their prices yet. It is something that can definitely drastically make a change for you. But again, we want to do this tactfully. We don't just want to like double your price just because you want to make more money. More like doubling your price does not mean that you're going to double your overall revenue, because you will lose some people. It's called elasticity in pricing, which means there's a certain price point that you're going to start losing people. I had been around a company before where they were like, we're at our capacity at the amount of whatever that we can do. Why don't we just triple the price? And then even if we have a third of the customers, we'll still make the same amount of money, but we'll have to do a third of the output. And they did that eventually, even though we said that that's not how business works. And their sales actually drastically dropped off. They didn't just drop off by a third, they dropped off by a ton. So we have to do increasing pricing very tactfully. It can't be something that you just like explode your pricing to try to increase your sales. That's not how people work, but it is a way that you can, if it's a slight increase or you match it kind of based on different conversion rates and things like that. I really love to try to decrease your costs by still upholding your quality, especially when you get to a point and you can start buying things in bulk, you can start supplying things from bigger companies because you start to get more sales. Buying things in bulk, decreasing your costs definitely is something that can help. And so like making bigger batches and decreasing costs in that sense can definitely massively increase your actual profitability as well. It's not just your overall revenue, but also the profitability, because you can make $2 million, but if you're only profiting 3% of that $2 million, was that really worth it? How can we really go about doing that? And then last but not least is tweaks and adjustments. So what I recommend doing is kind of a mix of these, but we do have to do kind of that behind the scenes tweaks and adjustments first. So that comes down to analyzing the data and go from there. And now you've probably identified, whether you're here or not, that you're kind of in this sales plateau. You know that if you're growing or you're scaling, you have some kind of tangible ideas of different pieces that you can do to scale your sales and what that really looks like. And then now I want to talk about kind of some questions that you need to ask yourself when we are really first in that journey of figuring out how to scale your sales. It's almost a little bit of a reflection, but what it is the pieces that you have to identify within your strategy to be able to scale. Again, it's not about doing more, it's about being better with what you are currently doing. And so this is where we're kind of identifying that. First things first is, where are people falling off? Some key questions you need to answer when you're trying to scale your sales is, where are people falling off right now? Where are your conversion rates really, really low based on industry standard? Where are those people like falling off within your sales process? Are they following you but never going to your website? Are they going to your website but they're never buying? Are they poking around on your website all of the time, going back and being really interested, but they aren't actually ever converting into a customer? Do they buy from you once? They never buy from you again. It is the easiest thing you can do to grow your business is to get repeat customers. The easiest thing you can do is to prioritize having a loyal fan base, because then you don't have to work all the time to get new people into your audience. You just get your people to buy more often from you, and you know that they're coming back, and it kind of starts to compound and build. So where are people falling off in your sales process right now? Are you posting every day and people might be engaging a little bit, but they're not really ever going to your website and buying? Where really is that major fall off happening of people? Last but not least is, what is not growing? Because when we look at a sales, like a sales funnel, people are either ever growing, nurturing, or selling. Like that is, people are always in that phase. Are they grow, nurture, or sell right now? So your audience, are they cold? Are they warm? Or are they hot? And which one of those buckets is not growing for you? Growing, meaning is your follower count stale and stagnant, where you never have new people coming in? Is your email list never really getting new people coming in? Nurturing, is your nurture point, are you not getting more engagement month after month after month on your content? And selling, are you not seeing more sales? Are you not seeing more people going into your intro email sequence and converting? So which one of those buckets is not growing for you, and where can we kind of start to add some fuel into those fires? Though that a lot of times, again, will help you identify that gap that we need to find an opportunity in. Next one is what is working and how can you do better? So this is, what content do you know that performs really well? What content do you post that you know you're going to gain 10 followers from every single time you put it out there? What content do you post that you know you're going to get a sale from every single time you post it? And how can we post that content either more often or just optimize it to perform better? What is working and what does that say about your audience? Does it say that they are logical buyers? Does it say that they are emotional buyers? And how can we, are they visual? Do they like statistics? Whatever. What can we really qualify and quantify from that standpoint? The next one is what tweaks and adjustments do you know you need to make right now on something that could be better? Where is a space that you need to be able to improve that is going to allow you to convert better? Is that your email list? Do you not even have an email list? Do you have email funnels? What do your email funnels look like? And how can we go about making things convert better? Is your website a total chaotic mess? Like that's a big one for a lot of people. Is your website at the point of scaling? Like we do need your website to be able to be very robust where people can really convert from it. What are the inefficiencies that you're doing right now? What are things that you know that are too labor intensive, that are taking you too long and that really aren't actually converting well? They might be happening out there, but they're not converting overly well. And last but not least, what major expansion action are you going to take? Are you going to grow your visibility? Are you going to add a product line? Are you going to increase your price? Or are you going to decrease your cost? Everybody needs to make tweaks and adjustments at the point of scaling because that's the reason that you are in a sales plateau is because you have some major gaps that you might not know are there. So just judging based on those questions, you can see my question isn't looking at, how much marketing are you posting? I'm not talking about cadence. I'm not talking about frequency at all. I am strictly talking about strategy. I'm talking about looking at your brand and being able to identify where we really have to make some adjustments and make things convert better and more efficient for you. What this really comes down to is understanding those behind the scenes, making those changes, and then doing the major action. That is what scaling is all about, is making things more efficient and really leveling up who you are as the business founder and bringing light to the things that we normally don't really look at to be able to become a business that owns something that has a different level of sales that are coming in that kind of upgrades you from there. And when I say you have to become a different business founder, that doesn't mean you need to change what your personality is. That statement always made me feel really yucky. It's not like, oh, who do you need to become to make this happen? It really is, what actions do we need to do? What adjustments do we need to make into what's already out there in order to have a business that has become and converts really high, that it becomes at a level that we're able to make X amount of dollars and able to kind of level up to that next major notch that you're trying to get to in your sales. And so what it comes down to is so often we are in our own business all day long. Our brain is just functioning in our business all day long. All we're thinking about is, okay, we got to get that order out. We got to, hire this person, or I have to, make this thing, or I got to think about this next launch. And a lot of times we work in our business all of the time. We are working in our business. Yes, you might be developing a new launch and you're creating some content and you're managing everything and you're getting everything out. But what we have to do in order to scale is actually work on our business in a really big way. We have to do a major analyzation of everything that's going on to be able to say, okay, this is exactly what's working. You've been doing the working in your business for so long. We now have such a pool of data that we can go back to, which is awesome. And we can identify what's going well, what do we need to change, and what does that mean that we actually have to do moving forward, and where are those gaps and where are those opportunities that we can fill within our current actions that are going to increase our conversions immediately. The eyes that you have on your site every day, if you make some of those tweaks and adjustments, it's like if you had, if you have 500 people on your website every single day and your conversion rate right now is 1% and we increase that to 3% because we make one small change, or we add another page to your website where we answer some questions and it solves the problem on your website, and all of a sudden you can increase that conversion rate by a lot where you don't actually have to do anything else. You have eyes on your stuff right now that are not converting properly. So we have to convert better and then we expand. Convert better, then we expand. Improve our actions, and then we expand. Improve the sales process, and then we expand. So it's a lot of inward stuff first before you can actually go outwards. And so if you're in this sales plateau, I want you to really sit with this. You might really feel like, okay, Maddie, yep, I am in this sales plateau. I want you to sit and really think, what are some of the things that I know right now that are not converting properly, or that are a major gap in my strategy, or that I know that this isn't actually, like, the conversion rate is really low, that I've never actually spent the time to develop X, Y, and Z. Those are the places that you want to start first. The next thing is that you need to analyze data to be able to do this, because if you don't know any of those things, it's because we haven't looked at our data enough. I recommend doing like a mini deep dive into your data at least once a quarter, so you can really see what worked over this last quarter, what didn't, has anything changed, because the consumer behavior is constantly changing. And so what I want you to do is really just start kind of thinking through this. Maybe you jotted down some notes, maybe you jotted down a couple of the questions that I posed, or the things that I want you to kind of identify within your business. And I want you to look at those pieces and really work behind the scenes before you think about expansion. Because if you're in a sales plateau, we do need new people. We do need more people through the buying process. We do need to expand in some major way, but first you need to build a behind the scenes business that we know is converting higher. Because let's say right now your website is converting at 1%. Even if we increase the amount of people coming in, it'll still convert at 1%, but it could be converting at 2%. And then you have missed out on all of that growth that you could have had. And so we don't want to work on anything massive expansion until we actually work to solve the inefficiencies that we have behind the scenes. So when we do massively expand, we're able to capitalize and maximize on the amount of sales that we have because we've filled those gaps. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this was something that has kind of provided some new light. Again, I don't want to gatekeep strategies around here. This is what we do with our product sales expansion clients. This is the process we go through. I call it the ASOE model. We analyze the data, we simplify anything that isn't necessary, we optimize all of your things, and then we learn and we implement massive expansion strategies. Scaling does take massive expansion strategies, but we have to do these pieces behind the scenes first. If you are ever interested in working with us, you can always click the link below and apply and see what makes the most sense. I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Make sure that you are following this podcast, subscribed anywhere that we listen. It does help us, as well as it helps you get notified where it is. I would love to hear in my Instagram DMs, what was really a major takeaway here for you? Did I give you any kind of major, wow, I've never thought of that before? I love when you pop into my DMs. It helps me gauge the episodes that are really helpful for you, as well as it helps me make sure that I know who's in my audience, who's listening, so I can kind of shape those episodes for you in the next ones. So I hope you have a wonderful day. I love you. I'm rooting for you. I'm in your corner always. I can't wait to see you in the next episode.